Let's talk about and let's delineate like stretching versus mobility. Some people don't even know the difference. Stretching is basically just taking one muscle or one specific joint and bringing it from A to B. So if you reach for your
Mm.
toes, you're stretching your lumbar paraspinals and you're stretching your hamstrings. Great.
Oh, wow.
Mobility, though, is actually being strong within certain ranges of motion. So I can bring my arm
Mm.
like A to B and I'm stretching my lats and bringing my shoulder into flexion, but am I strong within that range of motion?
Dr. Jason Wan, I am super excited to have you on the Staying Ageless podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So I'm always fascinated about people's journeys, and I really want to know what made you or what led you to becoming an orthopedic specialist. And maybe you can also break down for some people who may not know what that is.
Yeah, so I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and we earned this title as far as the research and the credibility with kind of going beyond just a normal physical therapist. So we everything that we do is research based, and we base off of that. And so there's no second guessing on like the interventions that we have. A board certified orthopedic clinical specialist is one of 5,000 in the world that specifically help people with musculoskeletal complaints, nervous system issues, joint ligaments. So anything in regards to like the various pieces that make us human, that's what I love to help people with. And I've treated everything from head to toe. My journey has been, well, I've been a PT and it makes me feel old. I've been a PT for almost 10 years now.
Wow.
And yeah, the way my journey kind of started was, I guess the first one was when I was about 17, 18 years old. I got into a couple car accidents, and the first one wasn't too bad. The second one, the reason why I think it left me in a bad place was not necessarily due to the car accident. I mean, we were like, it was Black Friday. We were going like 80 miles an hour. My wheels spun off my car, and all of a sudden we
Oh my
spun
God.
violently into the wall. But that actually wasn't that bad. The part that confounded that was when my dad had stage 4 cancer, and he had that roughly around the same time that I went through a car accident. So you're kind of mixing emotional distress with physical symptoms, and that generally leads to a lot more physical complaints and symptoms. So my dad ultimately he passed in 2008. Pretty
Sorry.
tough time because I thought he would be a role model. He throughout my life, I lost him at 19. But the thing that really pushed me to become a physical therapist was because each and every week, instead of kind of enjoying my freshman and sophomore year of college, I was driving home every weekend to get him off the couch. Eventually, I saw one of the strongest men I've ever known lose the ability to do things. And so it's obviously really hard on me. But the one thing that I always said was like, I'm going to be healthier for my kids. I'm going to be stronger for my kids. I'm going to take care of my health and be just, I guess I'm just going to learn everything about myself so that I can help others do the same. And so
Mm.
I feel that just not at just beyond my physical therapy, but the reason why I'm so passionate for helping people with chronic pain and to help them live a more fulfilling life is because of that. I don't want other parents and other people to go through the same experiences that I did. So that's why I really have a passion for helping, parents, professionals, really get them to a point of prevention and not just like, okay, when something bad happens, that's when you decide to do something, but instead to learn how to fix some of your pains and injuries now, so that
Mm.
later on in life you can really feel more fulfilled.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's amazing how, I don't know, I find the most interesting health professionals are the ones who have gone through a specific personal journey, but that's just me. What do I
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
um, what do you feel like are the biggest mistakes you see as far as like lifestyle choices and stuff like that that lead people to being more prone to injury or just having chronic pain?
The very first one that I see is that the vast majority of jobs are sitting now because we're all stuck in front of
Mm,
a screen. And
guilty.
I think I think a lot of us are guilty for it. I personally, I help people on an online basis. I have a lot of online programs. And so I'm fixated to a screen as well. But I think that when people are sitting for 40 to 60 hours a week, but then they decide to do like a weekend warrior trip and they try to hike Yosemite or something like that, there's a huge mismatch between your sedentary
Mm.
lifestyle and you expecting that your body's going to be okay with something that you do on the weekend. So I think that's
Mm.
mistake number one is not building more kind of strength training into your daily, like strength training 3 days a week, not too much, even if it's just 30 minutes per session. And mobility, which I think is a big subject that we should focus on. But a lot of people, their upper backs and their necks and their whole everything is getting stiffer if you just sit there. So again, expecting that you can throw a ball with your son, if you can just go for that run automatically, but the 40% of your life is stuck at a desk. I think that there's a huge discrepancy there. So that's why I
Oh,
really teach my clients on how to build habits of movements into their life. So even if they, despite them having a sedentary job, they still know how to maintain their level of mobility throughout their life.
that's so good. And I have a trainer right now, and she's really big on, non-exercise energy expenditure. So it's like you got to go for a walk, you got to do 15-minute walks in between your workouts, da 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 da. And I have
Yeah,
the most amazing chiropractor slash kinesiologist. He helped me so much because I got into car accidents, but
okay,
then I was kind of like stuck at the chiropractor regularly getting these adjustments. And he
right,
was the first person who seemed to understand the body enough to be like, oh, you just need this muscle's weak. Just do these exercises. And then my back pain just like went away. And I've never had to, do you know what I mean? Do any more adjustments. And then
right.
he's helped me with other stuff, which has been the result of me sitting too much. So when you were
Yeah,
saying that, I was like, oh God, you're so right. And this is why I have a standing desk, because you try to like do things to like make yourself get out of the sitting.
exactly right.
But let's talk about mobility. So I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like no one really talked about it as much. And then all of a sudden it became like maybe in the past year or so, it's like everyone and their
Viral,
mom wants to talk about mobility. And I was
right?
like, that's interesting. But I had a trainer and he was obsessed with mobility and stretching. He was the stretchologist. So it really got me to think differently because every single time I'd have a session with this guy, I would be like, wow, I feel like a new person. I can walk better.
Right.
I can do things better just from doing mobility exercises. So I'd love you to just speak on that. Like, what's your take on it? Like, and when is it useful? When is it not useful? Is it better than stretching? Do you need it with stretching? I have so many questions.
Yeah, there's a good amount of questions. I feel like we can uncover that and like stop me when you want to, because I can just talk about the
Okay.
subject all day. But I guess let's talk about and let's delineate like stretching versus mobility. Some people don't even know the difference. So stretching is basically just taking one muscle or one specific joint and bringing it from A to B. So basically bring A to B and bring
Mm,
it further apart. So if you reach for your
mm,
toes, you're stretching your lumbar paraspinals and you're stretching your hamstrings. Great. So you're stretching. Static stretching has not been shown to decrease risk of injury. It has been shown to potentially cause decrement to performance if you do too much
mm,
static stretching. So bringing point A and point B further apart stretches the sarcomere, and then therefore the sarcomere, which is basically the muscle, the unit that causes contraction of muscle, they can't even link to each other. So therefore, you actually get temporarily weaker.
oh, wow.
Mobility, though, is actually being strong within certain ranges of motion. So I can bring my arm
Mm,
like A to B, and I'm stretching my lats and bringing my shoulder into flexion. But am I strong within that range of motion? So being stable,
mm,
strong within a specific range of motion is what defines more mobility. So I stretching again, a lot of people stretch. I mean, you see a lot of older individuals in the parks stretch, but is that going to be the main thing for longevity if they can't pick up a box, right? They can't pick up a
right,
box. What's the use of being flexible if you're not strong, right? So that's
right.
why bringing in strength and mobility and doing a mixture of dumbbell and resistance band training, to provide the strength, but being stable and strong within the range of motion, that's what defines a person that can be flexible and strong at the same time.
That's good. That's good. Do you use that for physical therapy too? Is it helpful when people are trying to get their range of motion back to do mobility, or sometimes would that be dangerous?
It depends. I mean, I guess that I want to make it as white and black as possible, but quite frankly, it depends. It's kind of arbitrary. So it depends on like what the person's specific complaints are. Do they have like
Right.
a complex, do they have a complex syndrome of like a vast myriad of different ailments that may impact their ability to do weight training? There's always going to be those like what ifs, but the
Mm-hmm.
vast majority, I would say 99% of my clients, I'm like, what gets them the fastest result and what actually gets them better is when you put a dumbbell or a barbell or something in their hand. Once you put that in their hand, that is like long-term ibuprofen without the side effects, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I truly think that, for example, let's say you're lacking squat mobility and like, your hips are stiff, your knees are stiff. Well, add a dumbbell to the mix and put them on like a elevated platform and see that they can squat deeper. Why can they squat deeper? Because gravity plus the weight is actually dragging their hips and their knees and their ankles into more range of motion. So like
Mm.
loading people into greater mobility and then being able to see, wow, like my mobility and my body feels vastly different, not because of
Mm,
just
mm,
stretching
mm,
something from A to B, but again, adding a little bit of load and resistance in the mix. That's where the magic happens.
Hmm. That's really cool. And it makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense that as we age, the mobility would be very, very important, obviously, in order for us to be able to have a high level quality of life.
Mhm.
Um, Interesting. And where do you feel like is a good resource for people to learn about mobility when they don't know anything about it, or like what exercises are best for them? I found that having a trainer directly helped me because he basically assessed my problem points and was like, these are the exercises you need to do every day, you know?
Mhm. It's a great point. If you are many chapters below and you're trying to speed up your learning curve, there's nothing better than investing in yourself and investing in a coach, investing in a trainer, investing in a physical therapist, for example. Like you invest in yourself. And if you're not willing to invest in yourself, then that's the type of results you're going to get. If you're trying to invest in your business, the business is going to grow. If you invest in your health is likely going to grow as well. I guess just going back to the quality of life thing is important. I think maybe for your audience to understand is you could be really flexible throughout your life, but what's going to actually contribute to better quality of life is whether you can get off a couch on your own, whether you can get
Mm,
off the floor on your own, whether you can pick up a box, whether you can pick up your grandkids. So if I lose the ability to touch my toes, does that diminish my quality of life? Um, Sorry. Does that truly diminish my quality of life
hmm
if I lose the ability to touch my toes? Not
hmm
necessarily, but
Exactly.
if, yeah, if I'm stronger, if I'm strong throughout my life and I maintain as much muscle mass and power throughout my life, that's what gives me the true quality of life. And again, I say is if you're not certain of what exercises to do, then you have obviously a myriad of resources that are free first, like YouTube and Instagram. And while it's not directly related to you and your specific concerns, it's a good place to start. And I put out a lot of free resources. But if you want somebody that's going to hand tailor it to you or, actually proceed with compliance, well, the compliance is going to be breeded through actually investing into a coach or into a trainer. Because essentially you put your money where your mouth is and you're actually going to yield the result. You're actually going to do the work if you pay for it.
Definitely. Definitely. I saw that so I know that you're really big on helping people get rid of pain. And you have a lot of these amazing testimonials of people who've dealt with chronic pain for a really long
Right.
time. And they just, they worked with you and then their pain went away. Right. What is your philosophy on like how do you approach people with chronic pain? Is it different from someone else? Like what is your approach basically?
Just to define chronic pain first are people that have had some sort of pain or injury that hasn't resolved after 3 months, because generally the body is pretty resilient. And after an ankle sprain, 12 weeks from an ankle sprain, you should be relatively healed. But with chronic pain, you don't just take the physical ailments and treat it as such. You have to take the entire person as a whole. So the kind of the approach that I've taken is called a biopsychosocial approach. It's
Mm.
taking everything that they are and making sure that you hand tailor to them. So you provide them exercises, but you have to understand their lifestyle. You have to understand their financial concerns. You have to understand their stressors. Are they in a bad relationship? Do they do they get poor sleep? So you're taking a kind of a multifaceted approach towards helping somebody with chronic pain. If it's an ankle sprain and it's like a 9-year-old kid come into my office, yeah, ankle stability, just strength train them, get them back to playing sports, they're good to go. With somebody with chronic pain, you really have to take everything that they are, all the baggage, everything about them, and really care for them. One thing that really helps a person with chronic pain is called therapeutic alliance. It's like 50% of the outcomes of a positive outcome is going to come from actually have good rapport and making sure that they trust you. But they're not going to trust you if you just give them a cookie cutter set of exercises. You have to really get to know them, be able to help them to mitigate their stresses, be able to help them in a lot of ways possible. Because if you just take it as such, just exercises, they're not going to get better. You have to look at the psychology of like everything. That's why chronic pain, it's a multifactorial approach. Sometimes it's a multifactor. That's why sometimes you need a team. You need to look at nutrition and sleep and all that too.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's exactly my approach to treating clients as well. And I feel like, I don't know, the longer I do this, the more I realize that people who are getting results are always looking at it that way. They're always like, I need to understand this entire person. If you don't understand the person, I always make a joke that, like, someone can go in the emergency room and they're like, my foot hurts. And the doctor's like, okay, here's this medicine. But you didn't ask them if they dropped a weight on their foot. You didn't ask them if they twisted their ankle. You didn't ask them
Yep.
if their husband kicked them and kicked the foot. You didn't ask them nothing. And there's so many questions that have to be asked in all of these situations.
Right.
In order to really pinpoint, like, okay, how can we actually resolve this? So I think that's really cool that that's what you're doing also from a chronic pain perspective. Do you have them look at their diet as well, or not really?
I do. I think that if somebody wants to eliminate some of their chronic back issues or knee issues that they've had in a while, I've had my own weight loss journey. I've lost 27 pounds in like less than 6 months. And I have a very just like regimented way of how to do that, a very objective way to do that. And I think that, yeah, obviously if you're carrying 27 less pounds of yourself, that's much less stress on your hips, your knees, your lower back in general. So I do really take nutrition into account. But I have a wide array of people in my network so that if I need to refer out because it's out of my expertise, I'm always humble and willing to take other people's expertise into account. But I love talking about nutrition equally as much as physical therapy. I've had my own, like, I was obese back when I was younger and I've lost a significant amount of weight. So I think that, while I have certain knowledge around like weight loss, I'm always willing to take into account, anti-inflammatory diets and things that may help the person to inch the needle forward outside of the strength and mobility aspects too.
Yeah, yeah. I have I deal with pain all the time in my practice, but in different angles. So sometimes people are coming with arthritic pain. A lot of people are coming with menstrual related pain. So we help them get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, there's a client of mine who was, he lost a bunch of weight. I think he's lost now maybe 50 pounds.
Nice.
And really just, we changed his diet. And then also based on his body type, I kind of tailored his diet to be more effective because he just is super carb sensitive. His A1C is going out of the, out the water. It's just craziness. But as a result of doing all this stuff to normalize his A1C, he randomly noticed that this knee pain that he had for the longest time was gone. And it's like, it's the small things where sometimes you think it's like, it requires an entire structural adjustment, but it actually requires a diet adjustment because your diet is so inflammatory that it's creating these pains, and that's what he realized. He realized, oh my goodness, like just by doing this, I don't have any more knee pain.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, there's a lot of routes you can go around this, like that, people that have like metabolic syndrome or diabetes and, if their A1C levels are up, it's like, well, they're more prone to retinopathy, arthritis, right? The blood circulation's not as good. They recover poorly from workouts, which also that's a double-edged sword. They have to exercise, but they're not recovering really well. So I get it. It's like, that's why I like to talk with people like yourself that take a more kind of multifaceted approach, looking at the diet, but also looking at strength and mobility. And again, looking at mindset. So people that I treat are people with chronic pain. So you have to look at it from a very multifaceted lens.
While I have you here, I'm sure other people want to know about this too. And I've been working out a lot lately. I've been working out like 4 times a week, strength training plus Pilates. La, la, la,
Nice.
la. I'm whining about it, but it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what do you recommend for recovery? Like what's the best way to recover fast, especially if you're trying to build muscle, if you're in the gym quite a bit. I have my own philosophies on it, but I definitely would prefer to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, I like to speak about locations of recovery. So, like, where are the best places to go to for recovery, and then what are like the best modes of recovery. So, the 2 locations are the kitchen and the bedroom, and then the
Oh, that's
2 modes of
good.
recovery are sleep and nutrition again. So,
Mm,
sleep is your most underrated form of recovery, right? You can't do a 2 hour workout, boot camp workout, and then sleep for 5.5, 6 hours, right? If you can optimize 7 to 9 hours, definitely ideal. You feel so much
mm,
better, mental clarity, you recover faster from your workouts. People fail to realize, and I hope your audience can get something for this. When you're working out, you're not building muscle. And people get that wrong. It's like you're not building muscle in the gym. You're
mm.
breaking down the
Breaking
muscle.
them down.
You might
Yeah.
look you might look swole, you might look inflamed and be like, dude, I look jacked right now during the workout, but you're actually inflamed and you've broken down the muscle. So where do you
Right.
build the muscle back up? You have to get yourself out of that catabolic slash, it's called a breakdown state, and you have to get
Yeah.
yourself back into an anabolic slash
Anabolic.
muscle
Right.
stimulating phase. And that comes in the form of sleep. And also you got to get into the kitchen. And you should, if you are on a strength training plan, you need to be getting a minimum of like 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass at the bare minimum. If you're
Mm-hmm.
sedentary, it's like 0.35 to 0.45, but I always overshoot my protein, at least
Right.
1 gram per pound, because protein in Latin is like, or in Greek, I think it means of utmost importance. And yet people under eat protein. Like 90% of Americans under eat protein, yet I don't know why. I know it's sometimes hard for people to get in, but protein is that anabolic stimulus that people need in order to build muscle. So that's how you recover fastest from workouts is the 2 most holistic ways are in the kitchen and in the bedroom.
That's good. I like it. So, I deal with a lot of women over 40, and I find that in perimenopausal and menopausal states, you really need a good amount of protein because your body's already breaking down. And so I've helped some like people do it plant-based as well. It doesn't even matter if you're plant-based or not. You can still hit those goals. You just have to be
Yeah,
very strategic, you know?
right.
But it's so important for women over a certain age because you're already losing muscle mass. So it's like the two
Definitely.
things you can do is like build more muscle mass, eat more protein. For
Definitely.
me, though, from a recovery standpoint, I love things like turmeric. I love castor oil packs. I love magnesium. I love Epsom salt
I do take
baths.
magnesium, Epsom salt.
Mhm.
Yep.
Magnesium is so important, needed for over 300 biochemical reactions. People are always deficient. So I find that
Right.
like when people work out a lot, the magnesium helps them a great deal.
For sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then foam rolling is my favorite thing. Foam rolling, massages, acupuncture, all those things are my favorite things.
Those are all modes of recovery too. Research does show that if you get an actual like, an LMT, like a licensed massage therapist to massage the tissues, that greatly enhances your speed of recovery, and also it speeds up delayed onset muscle soreness. So it actually speeds up that phase where it's 48 to 72 hours. You can kind of cut that down by at least 50%. Obviously, it costs money, so that's why they have these other modes of recovery, like foam rolling is your own form. You may have some massage guns. And so yeah, taking the time after your resistance training to do some form of foam rolling, I think is really indicated.
Awesome. Awesome. You're the bomb.com. So, Dr. Jason Wan, where can people find you online, social media, as well as your website and all that jazz?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same name throughout the board. So my website's flexwithdrj.com. It's flex with and the full word doctor, JAY.com. And then whether it's Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, you can find me at a ton of places. Again, still flex with Dr. J. And yeah, if anybody does, if anybody wants to learn more about like what we do, I mean, simply I do have an ebook as well. We talked about desk-bound professionals and the importance of mobility. So if you go to flexdrj.com/ebook, you can just download a free ebook. Talks about some of the myths of posture, has some ergonomic tips, but then also gives you a free 5 exercise plan that you can do right at your desk. So I do find it's pretty valuable. I've modified it a couple times, and yet, 5 years later, people are still downloading it. So it's my gift to
Awesome.
you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. I will link that in the show notes for anyone who wants to check it out. Thank you so much, Dr. Jason Wan. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
All right, appreciate you. Thank you so much.